Good morning, my beautiful friends. This is your wake up call with Maui Paul. I am Maui Paul, and today we are here to say some nice things about ourselves. We're going to be going through this amazing I Am deck. Now, this deck is full of incredible affirmations, good things that we can say to really affirm what is true about us. And so I'm going to ask you if you are the affirmation on the card, you're going to respond, I am the affirmation on the card, and then I will affirm why that is true. We're going to write it down in the comments so that we take it from something that's just up in here to something that goes through our fingers and really make it real in the world. And in doing so, we are going to change our internal dialogue away from something that is self-hating or self-loathing or negative or accusatory and replace it with a self-monologue, a self-dialogue inside of our heads that is edifying to us and that helps us to achieve our goals. So thank you guys so very much for those of you who share this. You know, these videos get about 1,000 impressions a week, and I think that's just a really cool thing. So thank you so very much for those people who share it. I encourage you to do so. So let's pull a card off the top of the deck and let's see what we are today. Today we affirm that I am centered. I am centered. I focus on my breath and stabilize my emotions. So I am centered. I focus on my breath and stabilize my emotions. Are you centered? You are centered. You focus on your breath and you stabilize your emotions. Yes, indeed. I like the ripple in there. I really like that ripple because in the end, like, it's just such a really good picture of what centeredness is all about. So I'm going to write down in the comments right now that I am centered, and I encourage you guys to write down the same exact thing. But I love the metaphor of the ripple. A ripple is a disturbance in a field, in an energy field. We can imagine that a ripple is a disturbance in a lake or a puddle, or when we throw a pebble into a still pond, it makes a ripple. But we can't lift the ripple up out of the pond. The ripple is an integral part of the pond. The ripple is the ripple can't be removed from it. The pebble is a thing and the pond is a thing, and the way that the pebble and the pond interact is the ripple, and the ripple just goes out and it becomes much larger than that tiny little pebble that was thrown in there to make the ripple in the first place. So I am centered, and scientists excuse me, scientists have a general consensus that human beings are perceptual beings. We perceive things. We have eyes, we have a mouth, we have a nose. I can see that, I can see myself as I'm doing this video. I can see the people who are writing down comments. And so I perceive this stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what I'm perceiving is the truth about what is. There's a mental model called that the map is not the territory, which basically means that when you look at a map of something, you see shapes that represent that something, but you don't actually see the something itself. Consider a map of the United States. You can probably picture what that map would look like in your head. You can recognize the shapes. You probably recognize, Florida is down in the lower right corner. It's hanging off on a peninsula, and then you kind of got Maine on the upper left or on the upper right corner, and then you got California over on the left side. The left coast, California and Oregon and stuff like that. And everything's bigger in Texas, right? We can probably imagine what that looks like. But does that map look anything at all like what the actual United States looks like? I'm in the United States right now, and I don't see anything that looks even remotely like that. And so the map is not the territory. The map is a representation of the territory, and in the same way, perception is not reality. The way that we perceive things is not the actual things. There's a lot of evidence in evolutionary science to support this, as well as in various forms of metaphysics. But the core thing is that when we are centered in our own awareness. And in our awareness, we're powerful. We are powerful to change our awareness. We are powerful to act in accordance with our awareness. And what this card is asking us to do today is to be centered in the now, centered in the here and the now, because as we are in the future, we can't do anything. And if we're in the past, we can't do anything either. The future exists only in our imaginations. We can probably predict it with some accuracy, but it exists only in our imaginations, and it could be completely cataclysmically different. I remember when I was doing adventure tourism, I had to take a first aid class, and one of the things that we discovered was shock. Or one of the things that we studied was shock. You know, what is shock, so that we could recognize what causes shock. What is it? And besides the fact that medical professionals still don't have a general consensus as to what shock is, one of the definitions that was offered was that it was a complete and total subversion of expectations. Somebody would be in shock, for example, if they got into a car crash, because nobody gets into their car expecting to crash. Car crashes happen often very suddenly with very little warning. And so that is, that's what shock is. It's a complete subversion of expectations. So the future is something that exists entirely in our heads. We have an expectation about what's going to happen, and sometimes that expectation is completely not the thing that happens, and then we end up in shock. So we don't really have any power there, but we do have power in this moment, in this here, and this now. And so that's what being centered is all about. And being centered is really about focusing on the breath. As we focus on the breath, we are actually focusing on something which is essentially infinite. Have you ever run out of air? It's not something that happens unless we're in a very unique sort of a situation. You know, there's always enough air around us, and even though other people around us share that same air, we don't typically find that there's not enough. We have to be in a very, very unique and special situation for that to happen. So breathe in and breathe out, and remember that we're alive. And let's be centered today. Let's be centered on our dreams, and let's be centered on our goals, and let's be centered on how do we love other people to the absolute best of our ability. And if you need a different affirmation, you can find them all on my YouTube channel, which is linked in the video description. So you can head on over there where these things are a lot more organized. And I really appreciate everybody who has joined me today. Thank you guys so very much for commenting and for commenting on each other. It brings me special joy when I see that the folks who are commenting are actually finding each other's comments and lifting each other up and building each other up. Thank you for creating a space of this love on the internet today. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Aloha from paradise.